Call to order. Roll call.
Donahue?
Here.
McKnight?
Here.
Roa?
Here.
Vogel? Here. Stearns?
Here. If we, Andy, you got the flag up? Thank you. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance,
to the flag of the United States of
America, and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all. Great, thank you. Katie, any public comments on the agenda tonight?
Your Honor, I did receive one public comment on Friday from Sarah Chapp. She said, Thank you for the nomination as a member of the Beautification Committee. As an 8-year resident of Meadville, my family and I have immersed ourselves in the community because we truly believe in the potential of Meadville and its citizens. I promise that if I am slated as a new member of this organization, I will work hard for the best interests of this great Northwest PA city.
Okay, thank you. Katie, direct question. Did we have any comments on the third-part billing from our last meeting?
No, Your Honor, I did not receive any comments regarding that.
Okay, thank you. Andy, if you would like to do the COVID-19 update.
Yes, Your Honor. So no significant updates to share. We still operate under a declaration of disaster emergency until further action by council. Obviously the daily case loads continue to hold at a fairly low level and decline, so we're grateful for that. And as we read in the Meadville Tribune, the vaccination clinics continue, sponsored both by Meadville Medical Center, and then there was a recent one by the Walmart pharmacy chain. And so we continue to sort of logistically support those efforts where possible to provide the most flexibility for that to happen in the community. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Notice of executive sessions, Katie?
Your Honor, an executive session was held on February 3rd to discuss real estate. An executive session was held February 16th to discuss personnel and real estate.
Okay, thank you. Motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Motion.
So moved.
Okay, Jim made the move. I didn't hear the second.
I second.
Okay, thanks, Larry. Any discussion? Roll call.
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel? Aye. Stearns?
Aye. Sorry. Communications, Katie. I believe we have 2 letters. If you could share with us, please.
Your Honor, the first letter is from Armstrong Cable Services and is dated January 29th. They are writing to say that they are outlining the rate adjustments that will take place in the coming month. They are only adjusting video products at this time. Internet and telephone costs will not change. And they note that, as has been the cases in past years, the primary driver of the adjustment in video pricing is the skyrocketing costs they pay for programming. Increases from content suppliers and broadcasters continue to outpace inflation.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Letter B.
The second letter, Your Honor, is from Reverend Gary Manning. Reverend Manning writes to say, he is, since the community has just celebrated the remembrance of Dr. Martin Luther King, he had a thought about the fact the African American community does not have a street statue or a plaque in remembrance of him. He said he was approached by Mr. Kenneth Overton, an elder citizen in their community, who asked that very same question. He stated that we have dinners in honor of Dr. King, which is good, but he believes that they need something more that will remind of him all year round, especially all that he has accomplished for all African Americans. They're asking to address this matter with council.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Speaking on that quickly, I know we've asked staff to do some research for us, and as soon as they get that information together, we will share that. Am I correct on that, Andy? I made that comment?
Yeah, I mean, so that with respect to street naming, council does have a 2007 policy for street naming or street dedications to Meadville citizens. Dr. Kane, of course, was not a Meadville citizen, so would have to, you know, if council wanted to move forward with this, it would have to, that's the policy that you've adopted so far for a dedication policy for Meadville citizens. So I don't know how council wishes to proceed, but you can advise me.
Okay. I guess we need to see what the ordinance is exactly on in the process. So we're going to have to put that on the agenda in the future here. Does that sound kosher with all council?
Yeah, and my next manager's report, Your Honor, I can discuss the policy at our next meeting, at least as a starting point, if you'd like.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you, Andy. Any other communications, Katie?
No, Your Honor, I've received no other communications.
Okay, thank you so much. Andy's manager's report, I'll let you take the ball.
I will in a minute turn over to Gary Johnson, who would like to have a bit of dialogue with council about some proposed property maintenance code updates. But in the meantime, I'll just hit a couple of notes. The most important of which probably is that, council, you were aware because I met with you last evening in executive session, and there's been some press about it today, but I did in fact submit my resignation last evening to council to be effective Friday, March 26th, to accept a new position at Allegheny College as the Executive Director of Economic Development, Community Development, and Civic Engagement, which is a new position established by President Link to work closely with the college and the city and other community partners in support of economic development strategies and investment of the resources of campus, right? Whether that be faculty and students and the resources and interests of alumni. So I'm excited for that opportunity, and I'm grateful to council to have served you and this great community, and look forward to just serving in a different capacity. Some other notes then, I had reported just in written notes to council that back in 1993, the city had loaned $70,575 to the Academy Theater Foundation for improvements to the Academy Theater. And the note and loan payments had gone delinquent and unpaid, and it was originally revisited and renegotiated back in 2012. And essentially the final payment was received earlier this month. And at our next meeting, there will be a resolution on council's agenda to authorize signatures on the satisfaction piece, which is just how we release the mortgage and the security of that loan. So that loan has been paid in full. And again, you'll have action at your next meeting. I will note on a personnel front that Sergeant Kevin Lippincott from the police department has essentially retired. He had suffered a workers' comp related injury and ultimately separated employment back on February 9th. And so in a future meeting, we'll have a resolution recognizing him for his service. At our next March 3rd meeting, the Public Works Department will be prepared. We're working on, of course, 2021 paving plans, one of streets includes at least one brick street, which is East Street, or a portion of anyhow. And staff proposes to convert that from brick to asphalt. So they'll be at the next meeting to present some basic information about the condition of the street, and with the recommendation that council consider a resolution at its following meeting to approve conversion of that. The reason that would just introduce it at the March 3rd meeting and then take action at a future meeting is that we are notifying the residents on that street of that proposed action. So if they have public comment, they would be able to submit that ahead of your final action. So again, that'll be on your next meeting as well. And then just a general note in terms of park planning. There's been some dialogue with council in terms of council priorities about their interest in specifically Heide Cooper Park. And council is aware that several years ago we had completed with DCNR, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, funding a master plan for Bicentennial Park. And we've made some small improvements there. The boat rack, the sidewalk improvements, and the plan calls for additional parking. If you're there in the probably 6 or 8 months out of the year on weekends, that's a heavily used park, mostly because of the boat launch. So the plan calls for some additional parking. And the master plan also calls for renewed playground infrastructure, which there, frankly, is kind of pathetic. So we are preparing a grant application for new playground equipment, and also a grant application to Act 13. So those will come before council at a future meeting. But the note on Heide Cooper Park, before we're eligible for grant funding through DCNR, we have to have a completed master plan. And so we've been planning at a staff level to really conduct that in-house and to use our own third-party city engineer, Ashley Porter Consulting Engineers, to help us guide that. We would plan a series of public meetings. In terms of park improvements, we're working on two fronts, a grant application for the playground equipment at Bicentennial, and then a plan for master planning at Heide Cooper. So more to follow there. And I think, Your Honor, those are the end of my general notes. If there's not any questions, I would turn it over to Gary Johnson for a discussion on the proposed property maintenance code update.
Andy, if you could just make a note of something. I was coming up Water Street, and I noticed there's a really large pothole right across from the ICC. It's pretty deep. If you could just make a note of that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Do you have any sense, Your Honor, whether it could be related to construction of the curb ramps with respect to the new traffic signals, or is it maybe an independent spot?
No, it's independent. I actually heard foreign language coming out of it, so it's a pretty deep hole.
All right, fair enough.
It's right there by the car wash.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
I'll pass that along.
All right, thanks.
All right, if there's no other questions, then Gary, do you wish to review the property maintenance code proposed update?
Sure. Are you going to put that on the screen, or?
I certainly can.
Okay. Okay, so there's, good evening, council. So there's 8 updates that we're looking to, tweaks really to the property maintenance code that we're looking to see if we can get adopted. Just to go right through the memo, the first one deals with the method of service, which is the way that we deliver notices to property owners regarding issues at their properties. Right now, it basically says that the method of service has to be either delivered personally, sent by certified mail, or posted on the property. And if none of those 3 can be done, then notice can be done by first-class mail. I would propose to change it to allow first-class mail as one of the 4 permitted uses, as opposed to only if the other 3 don't work. This would significantly cut down on costs. Frankly, it's about 1/10 of the cost of a certified mail. We are not posting nor doing personal service during COVID, so we've been sending certified mail. It's just getting quite expensive with the number of notices that we send out. So we'd like to change that to allow first-class mail as a permitted method of service. I don't know if you want to ask questions when you have them as we're talking about the specific issue, or do you want to wait until we're done with the whole memo?
Could we ask questions on the specific incident provision? Sure. If I'm reading this correctly, it says it can be sent by certified or first-class mail already.
That's actually proposed. That the what you're reading is what's proposed to be changed, or to be. It's proposed to read that way. That's not how it reads right now.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. Yep. Any other questions on that?
Gary, we would get the same kind of notification that the notice wasn't received through first class mail that we would through certified mail, right? Like if it's sent to the property, but the property is vacant and we're not posting them to the property right now, and it would come back to the city. That would also happen the same way.
Not exactly the same way. With the certified mail, you have the green card that people would sign for receipt that would be returned to us. With the first class mail, it's assumed as a general principle that if it isn't returned, it was delivered. Now we may not have a signature stating that, but in general, if it doesn't get returned to us, it's assumed that it was at least delivered, just as a certified mail is delivered when we get a green card back. Now, whether they open the envelope or not and read it, we have no control or knowledge of that. But as long as it's put into their hands or it doesn't get returned to the city, then we assume that it's delivered.
Gary?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just see one problem with that. What if it's a renter and the land owner doesn't get the letter? It's thrown away, or so for the homeowner that is renting to that person may not ever get it.
If we were to send it to the property itself, that's correct, but we send it to the tax bill address.
Okay.
So it should get to the owner that way. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Okay. The second one deals with the penalty. Currently, we have a penalty of $50 to $1,000 for any particular violation, and that the specific amount is set by the judge. Judge Pendolino does that. Currently, it's $50. We're proposing to increase it to $100. This is two parts. First is to try to really recoup the cost that we might have in a violation that goes to citation. That includes preparing and mailing the notice of violation, which also includes the inspection, taking pictures, doing the follow-up inspections, filing the citation, etc., which takes both Nick and Katie's time, the inspector's time and Katie's time, as well as my time every so often when we talk about the violation. So it's a matter of, first of all, recouping the city's costs that are involved in it for property owners who refuse to comply with the notice, and also to offer some kind of increased deterrence so that hopefully it deters any kind of these types of violations to proceed to citation again in the future once these fines are assessed. So that's really the goal here with this change in the minimum fine. And again, the judge would set the actual fine between $100 and $1,000 as opposed to between $50 and $1,000.
Gary, is 100 enough, or should it be a little higher than that?
Well, it's adequate to recoup our costs and offer some measure of deterrence, I believe. It can obviously be higher if council wishes. At the same time, I don't know. It's kind of up to the judge. You can go, the minimum is still there and the maximum is still 1,000. So if the judge deems that it should be higher, he can do that as well. So. Does the judge have the ability with judicial discretion to suspend a fine, in which case there would be nothing? He could, yes. I believe so. Any other questions on that one? Okay, we can move to the next. This third one has to do with essentially our windows and doors ordinance, if you will. It deals with boardings of properties. And currently we require boardings on vacant structures to be pulled within 180 days of notice. And this is any window or any door that's boarded on a vacant structure right now. We give them 180 days to have them pulled and put in a proper window and doors. And the penalty on that, as I noted above, is actually $300 per opening per day. Currently, it only applies to vacant properties. When it was enacted, that's what the decision was. We're proposing to allow it to apply that to all structures, whether it's occupied or not. There's a couple reasons for that. Mainly, though, that we have to spend a little bit of time to determine if they're vacant or not, and that can be difficult to ascertain sometimes, even visiting the property, not positive if they're vacant or not. So we wanted to basically just make it a blanket. If it's boarded, it's to be pulled. So that's the intent of that change there. If there are any questions on that.
Gary, I have a question, but I'm not sure where it's going to fit into this. But
yes, sir.
For an example, when you're talking about boarding up buildings, so when there's a fire, as we have on Walnut Street, I noticed that property is still boarded up. Now, it might be for insurance reasons. I have no idea. But in a situation like that, how long can that building be maintained looking the way it is right now under our ordinance?
Well, I'll assuming that it's not structurally unsound. So speaking strictly to the boardings part of your question, 180 days from the notice of violation.
Okay.
Now, if it's structurally unsound or there are other issues involved, it wouldn't be under this specific code section. It'd be under other sections of the property maintenance code, as far as structural safety and stability. So that may be treated differently, but as far as the boardings themselves, it would be 180 days.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Gary, that engenders another question. There are occasions when some insurance companies require vacant properties to be boarded, or else the insurance will be dropped. So depending on how long the properties are vacant, if we force them to unboard, they may lose insurance. And if there was a fire loss, somebody's going to be stuck with the cost of removing the structure, and that might end up being the city. That's the only comment I'd make on that.
Well, isn't it possible that we could get some type of certification from the insurance company of that, to cover that? So, we don't have to worry about that. The insurance company could say, yes, we're requiring the property owner to maintain it boarded, or either they can remove boarding. I think I don't see it as a real big problem.
Well, the question is, how many insurance companies are out there? My guess would be in the hundreds, if not thousands.
Yeah, but we don't have that many. I mean, I think you're making it more than what it really could be. If they're insuring it, they're going to want to make sure that the insurance is on it. So who's ever insuring it could say, this is what I have to do. And I think the insurance companies would be willing to work with it. I understand there's a lot of insurance companies out there, but how many fires do we have? How many houses do we have boarded up in this area?
We have a number boarded up.
Well, then that's what we should do, is go get a hold of the property owners. If they have the insurance on it, they should get some type of written letter showing that they have why it's still boarded up and that the owner has insurance on it. If the owner can't do that, then I think we should proceed, but we should give them the opportunity, not just fine them and not know and understand why it's still boarded up.
Yeah, but if that's the case, then I would argue that it should be part of our code so that is clear.
I'm fine with that.
I have no other comments on this section.
So I guess, just to be clear, this is Gary. I just want to confirm. So it sounds, at least from two members of council, that you'd like to have some language added that it's if otherwise required by insurance, then it's okay to have it boarded.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you can take care of the wording, but yeah, that'd be the sentiment.
All right, Gary, this is Andy. When this portion of the ordinance, right, at least with respect to boarding of windows and the time frame, was really to avoid the prospect of long-term boardings being an acceptable condition. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And would the change being discussed here sort of negate that, or have the intent to negate that?
In those specific instances, it would. Where insurance would require the boardings to be on, it would, yes.
I mean, I think to me, the condition of a boarded up property being an acceptable weatherization is unacceptable. It is a blighting influence and a long-term condition that we would want to avoid.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the change as proposed, as proposed in front of us.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying, my point is, and maybe I'm not clear, my point is, if a house if the homeowner, maybe we should put in the wording that after we receive certification or notification that the insurance company is required them to keep it boarded, then maybe we should put a time period where they have to start moving on it to fix it, to get it back up on the market or something. I understand about the blight. Yeah, it does look bad. But my other side of that is, it takes time for insurance companies to respond. You got to give the homeowners. Now, if they fail to get anything, yeah, I think we ought to act on it. But I think we ought to be a little lenient on both sides of that fence. Let the homeowners reach out to their insurance companies to provide and show that they have insurance. If the homeowner doesn't do that, or have the insurance company give them a time period to show improvements or repairs on that home. Or maybe that's something we could do on our end and say, okay, the insurance company has said that they wanted it insured and boarded up, but we're giving you X amount of days or months to start and show repair on that.
This is Gary. I think when it was originally written, the 6 months, the 180 days, I think was built into that to give them opportunities to do that. I'm just speculating here. I think when it was originally written, that's what the purpose of having the 6 months was to give that time in the 180 days, just for whatever that's worth.
Well, Gary, it's absolutely right. So if I remember correctly, there was a property near the city building that was one of the reasons that we were concerned about the boarding, but it wasn't because of a fire or insurance. Individual purchased the property, and it took months and months and months for them to continue to work on it. And in the meantime, those windows were all boarded up. Isn't that the reason we added this to it, because of the number of boardings for a long period?
I'm not sure what specific property sparked it, but I know that there was a concern that there were boardings, there were long-time boardings. They became essentially part of the neighborhood with the boardings, and that council wanted that to be reversed. Not necessarily from fire, not necessarily from any kind of damage. It's just the fact that a window broke or a door broke, and they decided we're going to just board over it. I think that's where it came from. I can't recall specifically. This one actually came from council. It didn't come from a staff recommendation when it was originally enacted.
And Gary, you're correct on that.
Gary, would it be productive to increase the fine and cut the period of time? Would that accomplish the same objective? In other words, if we went from 180 days to 90 days and you boosted the fine from $300 to $500, would that accomplish what you're hoping to accomplish?
Frankly, from a code perspective, we just want it to apply evenly to all buildings in the city. That's all we're asking for here, is not strictly vacant structures. So structures that are also occupied should fall under the same requirement, because you do have buildings that are occupied and have boardings on them. I can tell you 2 or 3 of them right off the top of my head that have a couple of boardings. Not all of them, of course, but there's a couple of windows that are boarded. And you may not know it, frankly, because it's been like that for so long, but it definitely detracts from the neighborhood. And all we're asking here is just all buildings if you've got a boarding, it needs to go away, as opposed to just strictly vacant structures, which becomes a code headache trying to figure out how, is that or is that not occupied? And it's oftentimes difficult to ascertain that, surely, to be able to go to court. So that's really all we're asking for, is that it apply uniformly to all buildings in the city.
Yeah, that makes sense, Gary. I would maybe suggest that we keep moving through this. I feel like we're kind of getting hung up, and we're not planning to pass it tonight, right? We can ask for public input and we can give it more thought. But I feel like we're given a lot of time to pick apart little pieces, and we're not even just about halfway through. We're good to move. Is the rest of the council good to keep moving?
Okay. So the next one here has to do with junk, changing the definition of junk. We had several instances where there were complaints brought to the codes department talking about, hey, this property looks, there's a bunch of junk here. And when you look at the current definition of junk, it really has to do with items that are essentially damaged beyond their capacity to perform their intended purpose. So they're not able to do what they're intended to do. And so if we've run into several issues where we have household goods that are either stored on porches in boxes or just stored on porches themselves, stored out in the yards, generally what some people might call clutter. It's reworking, and there's frankly nothing we can do about that because they are not junk. They're just property that's on someone's property, and there's nothing the codes can do about it. So in response to those requests and those concerns, we proposed to, in that red section there, add that red section. And it essentially says pretty much any good that isn't typically stored outside, or typically stored in the weather, if you will, if it's left pretty much in the same position outside for more than 180 days, where it's not being used, and where it's just basically sitting there, that after 180 days would be considered junk, whether or not it's still able to perform its intended purpose. The reason for the 180 days is to allow time for, people to plan to have some other place to store it so that you don't essentially have permanent exterior storage of household goods. And the reason for the 180 days is to give time for people to do that, and also time if there's, for example, building materials outside. It gives people the opportunity to get that work done without being in violation of the ordinance. And we feel that 6 months should be adequate for interior work in general. And something to keep in mind with all of this is if someone truly has a hardship or truly has a plan to get it rectified, we will issue extensions to these types of violations as well. So if someone's renovation project goes over a little long, they can say, hey, we're almost done. We have an extension, and we'll give them another 30 days or so. But that's what we're looking for with redefining junk here. So with that, I don't know if we're still taking questions or if we're just moving through now. Not sure what you want to do with that, but that's what...
Gary, it's the mayor. I know 6 properties that I've received numerous complaints on that I've forwarded to the staff. I'm for seeing this added to defying the junk. I'd like to see that continue.
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
Okay. I don't think we put, okay. This one is fairly simple. We have these 3 sections deal with vehicles and junk vehicles. You'll see in the 3 sections there, the last one you'll see in red, the for more than 60 days. Currently that's not there. There is no special deadline for that when you talk about vehicle in state of major disassembly. So it would revert to the typical 25 days as opposed to 60. And what we're proposing to do here is add the 60 days so that any junk vehicle violation falls under the same 60-day deadline. It's a matter of cleaning that up.
Okay.
So you're saying that if a person has what they would consider a project car or bike or something, they can't even have it in their own garage for more than 60 days? Is that correct?
No, they can have it inside a building.
Okay. All right.
Yes. Yeah, this is strictly exterior junk vehicles to become attractive nuisance for kids, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. I'm in agreement with that as well.
Okay. Okay, I think we go to the next one then. This has to do with the perpetual people using tarps and house wrap or Tyvek, if you will, for the exteriors of structures. That's really what prompted this. So essentially it would say unapproved materials may not be used for the repair or construction of any building. This again, you'll have houses, maybe garages or houses that are being re-sided, and people have gotten to the house wrap section of it where you have that white plastic paper on the outside of a house that goes onto the siding, and they kind of stop there. That is not an acceptable or approved use of that house wrap. It's not supposed to be exposed to the sun for over that amount of time. It's not meant to be a waterproofing or weatherproofing material. Same as with tarps for roofs, tarps for enclosing porches, things like that. So this would basically give clear authority to the code guys to say, okay, you can't use, you need to cover over that Tyvek, or you need to re-roof your building, or you need to enclose your porch properly and not with plastic, something like that. That's really what the intent of this change would be. We don't have clear authority right now to do that, absent other types of violations that may accompany that. That's what we're trying to do there.
Gary, I have a question on that. Because this time of the year, take a drive out Baldwin Street, and you'll see numerous porches that have been closed, I would assume, for the winter months. The porches with, 60 by 40 pieces of tarp or even clear. So this would eliminate them from doing that during, like they're trying to close their porch in for the winter.
That's our intent, yes. It's one of the reasons why,
okay.
Yes.
Okay. And that would be on the property, so that means side, front, back. They cannot do that any longer then, correct?
Right. Now, to be clear, that doesn't mean that they can't cover something in the backyard with a tarp, because that's kind of the purpose of a tarp, is to, cover things like that, but it's not meant to be a building material.
Right.
So it's not
the reason
eliminating.
I'm questioning that is, individuals may have like a deck on the back of their house or a patio that they enclose for the winter months. So I just want to make sure that if that's going to cover that people understand they can no longer do that.
That would be the intent of this section, yes.
Okay.
I don't understand why, especially if the house is, if there's air, they're trying to save on heating costs. Maybe for the 3 months of winter, you can give them that period, but after a certain time, that it has to come down. I know people that do that because their houses are drafty, and they're doing what they can to save money, but you're telling them that can't be accepted. Maybe just during the winter months, I think we should make that exception, and then give them a deadline that it has to be down. Not that they just simply can't do it.
Gary, is it more for safety protection or just storage? Because some individuals will do that, wrap the front porch so their grill's covered. So is it more of a safety issue with you or looks? I guess that's where I'm looking at.
It's both. I mean, using tarps for roofing is not permitted. It usually doesn't fix the problem in the first place. Oftentimes it becomes permanent, and that's really what we're trying to avoid, because you're using materials that are not intended for that purpose. And so there's that, and there's also, frankly, there is a blighting influence of that. Same as the windows and doors. I mean, that's not necessarily a safety issue, but it's absolutely a blighting issue. So that's kind of it's both. It's safety and blight related.
Okay. If there's no other questions, why don't you go ahead and move on?
To be clear on this, all of these proposed changes, if the property is occupied by a tenant and there's a violation, the owner ends up being the person cited. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I guess I have a philosophical problem with that.
So I wonder specifically in regards to the kind of examples we've brought up around like folks using tarps and insulation to weatherize, right? Like, is there a way that we can refer people to weatherization resources that exist for that reason, right? As part of the citation process, right? Like step one is like, here are the resources that can help you weatherize your home, and so you're not paying so much.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see that, but weatherization is so overwhelmed already, with projects that by the time somebody may get to it, their 180 days is up.
To be clear, that wouldn't be 180 days as proposed. It could be. I mean, if council wants to institute like a longer term, like give them, okay, you got a year, get this figured out so you don't have to do it again next year. I mean, that's something you could talk about. Other deadlines as well, for sure. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not proposed to be anything more than the regular 25-day standard deadline for things. So, but absolutely could be.
Yeah, Gary, don't get me wrong. I am in agreement with you on the problems and the appearance that it gives of that. But, in looking at a lot of the people's situation, some of them may not have the income. And like I said prior, that's the only way of saving on heating costs. So that's why I'm thinking we should maybe look at other ways to work with them. But now if they're using it just to cover for the heck of it and hide stuff, I definitely would say let's move on that. That shouldn't be allowed.
Well, I mean, as I was sitting here thinking about this, how many, first of all, appearance, we got to keep that in mind because we have residents, that have property beside it. But I also really think about people that are having their summer furniture maybe on a back deck, and they take wood framing and frame that in for the winter months. That's why I was asking if it's the front of the house or the back of the house, because I see people doing that, where they store their summer stuff because they may not have a garage or the ability to store it. So, I mean, I don't want to see enclosures in the summertime by plastic because that doesn't make any sense other than maybe keeping rain out, but they can get a rain shade to put up. I'm just trying to think of other reasons why people may do it, but just to close in and to put, moving their furniture out on the porch and stuff, I'm not for that. But I want to be careful that just be careful that we're not infringing on where somebody might trying to store something, and then I look at it as if we talk about houses. What about motorhomes and things like that people take tarps and put around? I mean, it's on the property. And again, we got to be careful because if tenants are doing it, it's going to be up to the landlords to make that decision if they're going to allow structures like that to be done.
Is it safe to say that we need to talk about? Mayor?
What's that?
Is it safe to say that we need some discussion time on these issues?
Well, I think so, because I mean there may be situations where again, I don't want a piece of property blighted. I mean, I don't like windows boarded up and I don't like doors boarded up, but I also want to be very careful that we're not eliminating somebody from storing something for 3 months during the winter months, because they may not have the ability to store something. And I'm just thinking people, some people grill during the winter, but some people cover their grill up, put it underneath the porch. They cover up their swings, to save damages, or their riding mowers.
Yeah, I think I heard Gary say that is fine, that people can store stuff under tarps. It's just using it as building material that we're trying to avoid.
Right. And I agree. I agree with that.
This is Gary. Yeah, it's strictly related to buildings. That's how it's worded. Strictly to buildings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, Gary.
Okay. So two more real quick, hopefully. So the last couple, I'll back up, Andy, back up. This one is strictly changing deadlines for grass, snow, and refuse and garbage. Everything to 7 days from the current 3 and 5 variously. This would allow additional time, since this would go in hand with changing to regular first-class mail as opposed to certified mail. Just ensuring that people have adequate time to deal with violations when they get them. So currently with refuse, garbage, and snow and ice on the sidewalks, they only have 3 days. And so if you assume 2 days on a good day, on a good week for mail to get to someone, that leaves them 1 day to get things taken care of, which may not be enough time. So what we'd be proposing to do is to change all of those to 7 days for all of those types of nuisance violations. And then these are actually codified in the ordinance. These and only a few other deadlines are actually codified in the ordinances, which require council action. So we would allow, if you assume a 2-day notice, essentially this would still give them 5 days to get these things taken care of, which in court is supremely defensible at that point. There would be no claim to say I didn't have enough time, which is a concern that we've had for quite some time. In taking some of these to court, the judge will say, well, how much time did you have? Someone said, well, I don't know, I had it for like 10 minutes before we got cited for it. So if we bump everything up to 7, I think it's a reasonable accommodation while making sure violations get taken care of in a timely manner, but also giving property owners the ability to get it taken care of before it goes to citation. That's what that section right there is meant to do.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. I think then just the last one has to do with animal waste. It's interesting. The current language, when it talks about animal waste, exterior animal waste, it says all buildings, yards, and enclosures where animals are kept shall be free from accumulation of animal waste and shall be maintained in sanitary condition. It also talks about animal waste must be properly removed from the premises at least weekly. What we would propose to change it to is what we have in the italics above that says all animal waste must be kept and maintained so as not to create a public nuisance, generally stating that. And that would have to do with odors, with tracking, with whatever might be caused by that. And basically to say unless another manure management plan consistent with recognized standards is approved and implemented, animal waste must be properly removed from the premises regularly or composted so as not to create a public nuisance. So the point with this is, there's two of them. The first one is many fowl waste. That's a good pun. Chickens and ducks, basically. You can manage their waste efficiently and without creating a public nuisance, without removing it from the property. So this would allow that to be done without having to remove it, and also it would broaden the scope of what creates a public nuisance from the buildings, yards, and enclosures where animals are kept to pretty much anywhere that waste may create an issue. And that may be splitting hairs, but basically I think if we say so shall be maintained so as not to create a public nuisance, it covers anywhere on the property as opposed to strictly where those animals are being kept, so that property owners wouldn't shift them somewhere else and they right next to their neighbor's property line and create an issue. Then we can go after that then. Under the way it's currently written, maybe or maybe not. So that's the idea with that last one there.
And in that situation, Gary, who would you go after? You would go after the property owner, correct?
It's always the property owner
Well,
with exterior issues.
so now, like where I live, people use my yard, my neighbor's yard to take their dogs out. So are you telling me I would have to be, I clean up after my dog,
No.
but I'm
No.
responsible for cleaning up when someone else lets their dog go in my yard?
No. This is for animals that are on your property, that your pets are basically your pets. We have a pet code enforced by the police department that deals with people who let their animals go on someone else's property. There's specific regulations under the pet code that the police deal with under that. This is strictly related to waste generated by animals on your property that are owned by you for your own purposes.
Okay.
Gary, if you don't mind, I'm going to throw some. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Gary, maybe at a later time, I'd like to talk with you about what I would do with the other people that are doing this in my yard, because I've called the police, and I can't put a camera up to watch, to show it, because I would have to put it across the street to look at my yard. So maybe that's something, I don't want to waste any more time on it, but maybe that's something you can give me some suggestions or ideas on later on.
Okay.
Thank you.
We can do that.
Gary,
Yep.
Gary, now you guys may not be aware of this, but under Title 18, 5511C of the Pennsylvania Crimes Code, which deals strictly with animal waste, there are state regulations under that can be cited by any law enforcement officer duly sworn within the Commonwealth. Now, the reason I'm saying all that is this is almost a duplication of what's in the Pennsylvania Crimes Code, Title 18, 5511. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with this, but there's also state regulation that backs this up on the number of animals on your property, the amount of waste that it produces that has to deal with the number of square footage per animal. Cleaning up after waste becomes a health issue. So I'm sure you're aware of that. If not, like I said, under the Commonwealth law, there's a provision for this also. So there's.
I was not aware of that, but speaking from a code perspective, I'd be more than happy to turn this over to the police department to enforce, frankly. But I don't think Todd and his staff are going to be too happy about that.
Well, you know what? I hate to say it this way. It's a crimes code, and it's enforceable. So under 5511, it's there. Now, I'm not saying that our officers should be out there nailing everybody. That we have three different sections we're already talking about. You've got the pet ordinance, then you got the crimes code, or the anti-cruelty code under the Title 18. So there's a number of laws that can deal with situations like this, I guess is what I'm trying to explain to you.
Okay.
And I don't think that's changed in 3 years.
Like I said, be more than happy to leave it in there.
Yeah, you can leave it in there, or I'll get you a copy of the crimes code if you need it.
Okay. That's all I had.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I have two pieces, I guess, kind of just overall. First, I guess for the public, whoever has weathered through this, I hope that folks will weigh in. I know, like, certain things like increasing the penalty amount, like, to me at first, is something I would be leery of, but like I was very much surprised by how many people, and it was just a subset of the population, but how many people in the that survey that I had put out around budget season had said increasing fines for blight and issues around blight. So I would very much like. Right, these are issues that I think the public feels strongly about, and I would encourage folks to reach out to us. The second thing that I'll put maybe towards out to council and to Gary, I wonder, because I imagine it would have to be built into the property maintenance code, but I wonder what it might look like, and if we might have an appetite for kind of creating a code enforcement schedule. Almost the same way that we have like a leaf collection schedule that we publicize and make it known to people. Like when the leaf vac is coming to your neighborhood, right? Like we can publicize a schedule that's out so people know when code enforcement is coming to your neighborhood, right? I've heard from residents, right, that they had something on their lawn for not that long, or, you know, like, I mean, I think it was some of the stuff you were getting at, Gary, with like grass length and weeds and things like that, and extending some of those deadlines. But just thinking that potentially, right, like a scheduled plan for enforcement and publicizing that might be able to give people a little bit of notice, and they can kind of get their properties in shape. I wonder if what folks think of something like that.
Well, to a certain extent, I agree with it, though, but I think you're going to have those that are going to push the limit, wait till the last minute, and it's a continuous cycle with them. Or for example, getting their grass cut, you know, they'll let it get so long, and then it's cut, and then it's blown all over. I just think, I like the way they do it. They just, when they go through the neighborhood and they see, I'm quite sure that when they ride through the neighborhood, they just don't do it the one day. I think that they have the mindset to go through a couple times during the week or something in certain areas where they may see a problem. I don't think they just go in and on Monday and then Tuesday they write up a fine. So I don't think we need to change the language. Because I think that they use enough discretion to know.
This is Andy.
Any other questions for Gary?
This is Andy. We can't speak to obviously those situations, right? But the property maintenance code is a fairly basic standard for reasonable property maintenance. I don't know. I mean, we don't have the capacity, right? We're talking about 2 part-time individuals, and right now we're down to 1 just because someone left the position. I think it would be difficult to maintain a schedule with the resources that we have. We often rely upon, frankly, I mean, they do proactively enforce, but there's a lot of complaint-driven responses. I don't know if you can comment on that, Gary. And sort of how property maintenance and the resources that we have.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is patrol. We look around, we drive around and look for things, and I would say that's probably a majority of how we find violations. I will say that if we do see a violation like with grass, for example, if that's over 10 inches, we'll send a notice straight away. We're not going to let that sit. Other violations, potentially, you know, you might have some stuff sitting in the yard alongside of a house, maybe not be too much of a blighting influence on a neighborhood, but if it's there, you know, he goes back, you know, a month later and it's the same stuff sitting around, maybe he'll send a notice at that point. You know, and when I say that, I'm talking about junk or maybe a couple of bags or a couple of tires. Maybe we let it go for a little bit to see, hey, they're probably going to get rid of it. And if they don't, then, you know, a month comes around, yeah, we're going to send a notice that time because it is indeed a violation. As far as doing sweeps, such as letting people know where we're going to be, I mean, maybe we could do something like that in the spring of every year to say, hey, we're going to go around before cleanup day to all the different areas and let people know, hey, this is what we're looking for. You're going to want to plan to get rid of this before cleanup day or at cleanup day. As a precursor, we could do something like that maybe in the spring, as a way to try to, you know, give people an opportunity to get rid of some junk or stuff that they might have sitting around. That might be useful to do it that way. As far as a regular way of doing business, I'm not sure if that would be terribly helpful or not. I say that not having tried it, but maybe so definitely something in the spring we could drive around and you know, just send first class mail or send nice letters saying, hey, we notice you have this, our cleanup day is this time, maybe you want to take it down that day to avoid a notice. Might not be a bad idea.
I think that would be Gary, a great way to kind of start. Yeah. to give folks a heads up before a citation, right? But that's an opportunity to get rid of some of their jobs.
I agree.
So Gary, when there's a violation on this, you said it actually goes to the property owner and not the individual that's occupying the property. Am I correct?
That's correct, because we don't know who's occupying the property. That's the reason why.
I'm curious on, and we can talk about this later, but my curiosity is how many return calls do we get on the same property that is not the property owner that's causing the issue, it's the tenant that's not keeping the property up or the person leasing the property? I don't know if you have those numbers, I'm just curious.
The number of calls that we get on a renter-occupied property where the renter is causing the problem?
Yeah, because sometimes it's not the landlord causing the problem, it's the people that's running the property that continuously doesn't take care of the property. Well,
I guess what I'll say to that is we don't know. Well, first of all, we don't have a rental registration or inspection program, so we don't know who the tenants are. And I'm not advocating for it. I'm just noting that. That's all that was. And as a way to illustrate that we don't know who the tenant is. So we just don't know who they are, so we have to send it to the owner by default because we do know who the owner is. And speaking as a landlord, I fully recognize my rights and responsibilities as a landlord. And if I have a tenant that's causing continuous issues with the city and it's coming down on me, you can be very sure that I, as a businessman, am going to pass those costs on to the tenant. And also that they're, if a habitual problem, it would become a lease violation, and we, act accordingly to that. So that's what I can tell you from a city standpoint. We know who the owner is. We don't necessarily know who the tenant is, and the owner is the one that's ultimately responsible for that property.
Right.
I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of the
no, you did.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you answered it. Thanks.
Yep.
Gary, one more point.
Yes,
would you differentiate between a notice of violation and a citation, so that everyone, the public and council, is clear?
A notice of violation is is exactly that. We're saying, hey, you've got a problem. Your property is in violation of the property maintenance ordinance in this manner, and this is the code section, and et cetera, et cetera. You have this much time to get it taken care of, and if you don't, we have various remedies from the city. Will mow your yard for you, or we'll cite you in court, or whatever. And so if it isn't taken care of in that time frame, we re-inspect, and if it isn't taken care of, then we go ahead and follow up with a citation filed with Judge Pendolino. That's a non-traffic summary citation, criminal. And basically we file a citation. The defendant then would receive that. They would have to plead guilty or not guilty. If they plead guilty, they're fined. If they plead not guilty, we have a hearing at which time they would plead their case, and the judge would determine whether they're guilty. If he determines guilt, then he would assess the fine. The city never fines anyone. We don't have the authority to fine. It's always by the judge. Judge Pendolino is the only one that can fine anyone in the city. We just don't have that capacity. So that's the difference. A notice of violation comes from the city. It's a piece of paper, a couple of pieces of paper. It explains what the issue is. The citation comes from the judge after we file it there. And that's when you're really going to be facing penalties. You're never facing any penalties if things don't go to citation. Okay, if you get a notice of violation and you take care of what's in the notice of violation, everything goes away and everybody's happy. Citation is when you would have to plead guilty or not guilty, and that's when it becomes, finable, if you will.
Thank you, Gary.
Yep.
That's helpful. Thank you for explaining that.
Thanks, Gary.
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Andy, under your manager's report, I'd like to add something to it if we could.
You run this show.
All right. So what I'd like to recommend, because the numbers of the virus is dropping, I'd like to see us go back to a public meeting following the CCD, I can't even say it, protocol, the CDC, correct, thank you. If we could maybe begin to move our meetings back to the Water Street building. This way.
Yeah, Leroy, I'm not comfortable with that.
Okay.
I think until vaccines are more widely available, I'm really not comfortable with that.
How's the rest of the council feel?
It's time to go back.
I'd like to.
I would like to go back.
Autumn, would it be a possibility if we would go back to, Andy, could we still do audio with Autumn and video?
Yes, I believe the code, I'd research about it, as long as you can be seen and heard anyhow and can interact, it's viable attendance.
Okay. Well, let's discuss it and see what we can do.
Well, I mean, I need direction tonight because that's 2 weeks from now. So this would be the time to discuss it and decide.
Autumn, would you be comfortable by doing it by video?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Leroy, like, it's not necessarily just about me, right? Like, we're putting all of our staff in this room as well and, like, asking public to come to a public meeting when most of our staff, I don't think, qualify yet. I would say we hold off until 1C when public employees can get vaccinated. I say we should wait until our staff can be vaccinated, if they choose to, right, before we make them be in person at a meeting. That would be my vote. I would tune in virtually, right? But it's, again, I think it's not necessarily just about me.
Yeah, I do want to make sure our staff is safe and comfortable. Thank you, Autumn, for pointing that out.
Couldn't they go on virtually too, be online if they're not comfortable?
Yes.
Well, I brought it up, so I guess I'll ask the majority of Andy, do you want to speak to the staff and then we can make a decision?
Yeah, I mean, I can report back to you.
All right, why don't we do that? I certainly want to make sure that our staff is safe. If the public comes in, they would have to follow the same guidelines because they would still have the ability to follow it online. But Andy, why don't you meet with staff and report back to us if you don't mind?
I'll do that, Your Honor.
Council.
I should also review what the actual current Pennsylvania Department of Health is for occupancy, et cetera, and meeting size. So let me circle back. It's been that changes and sometimes without notice. So let me review that and also report back with.
All right,
Leroy,
Council, you okay with that?
Leroy, we wouldn't have to do it necessarily the first meeting of March. Andy could get back to us and we could change, if we're going to, by the second meeting of March, which would also give people more time to be vaccinated.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. That's good. Okay, why don't we go ahead and do that, Andy, if you can get back to us and then see how everybody feels about it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, anything else for Andy under manager's report? Again, Gary, thank you for the update. Council priorities, we got them listed there. We're still in the process of Andy, can you just give us just a quick thing on the 911 where we might be at with staff?
So we can be ready for a discussion with council for the March 3rd meeting. I know the police department staff and myself would prefer, I think, just the ability to do that at an in-person meeting. So I don't know if you would want to hold it off until an in-person meeting or not. It's an important topic that I know there's lots of interested stakeholders. But I guess at your pleasure, we could be ready for the March 3rd meeting to do a presentation. If that's a virtual meeting, it could be just have to be an online presentation. Would have city staff attend remotely.
Okay. Personally, I'd like to have an one-on-one meeting. with the 911, I think it's very important to hear what all the stakeholders have to say. It's very difficult to do it audio and video. But why don't we wait, Andy, until you come back with how staff feels about moving the meetings back, and then we can talk to council. How's that sound?
Sure.
Okay. The third part building we're going to be speaking about, and the other two we're still working on. So unless council has any comments on the priorities, then go ahead and move to old business. Okay, under old business, authority, boards, and commission, Katie.
Your Honor, the list hasn't changed other than there is a memo upcoming, a recommendation for appointment to fill the 2 vacancies on the Market Authority, which would leave 2 vacancies on Zoning Hearing Board for alternates and 1 vacancy on the Meadville Area Water Authority that still need to be filled.
Okay, well, there's a memo. Do you have a memo to read to us for an appointment then?
I do, Your Honor. Dear Council,
Okay.
as you are aware, the Market Authority received 7 applications for 2 vacancies occurring at the end of 2020 on the Market Authority Board. The ad hoc committee comprised of Councilmember Autumn Vogel, Deputy Mayor McKnight, Devin Stout, and Paula Burley elected to interview 4 candidates. The interviews were held on January 20th and 21st. After the interviews were completed, the ad hoc committee voted by consensus to recommend Jennifer Foreman be appointed for a term ending January 1st, 2026, and Seth Ernst be appointed for a term ending January 1st, 2025.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to appoint both?
I would so move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Autumn, Larry, anything you want to add? Okay, roll call. Oh, Autumn, your mouth was moving, but I didn't hear anything.
I'm sorry. I viewed on my phone too. No, I was just saying that everyone was great. We had really compelling applicants. It was a tough decision, and hopefully a lot of those other people will want to serve the city in other ways too. And thanks. There was a lot of deliberation. The Market Authority members spent a lot of time and energy on this decision, so I appreciate their work.
Yeah, and I would just like to thank everyone that applied as well. Like Autumn said, maybe they might find another committee or something that they want to volunteer on. And again, it makes me glad to see people wanting to be a part of making decisions for our city.
Okay, thank you. Roll call.
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel?
Aye.
Stearns?
Aye. Katie, we have a memo from the Beautification Committee's annual report. You want to give that to us?
Your Honor, we received an annual report from Zach Norwood, the outgoing chair of the Beautification Committee. He says, please accept this memo as the City of Meadville's Beautification Committee's formal annual report, which summarizes the committee's efforts over the 2020 term and recommends a slate of members for the 2021 term. Beautification Committee held 8 meetings since March of 2020. Pandemic limited their ability to meet in person and forced them to reschedule meeting dates to prevent a conflict with the Planning Commission. They now meet the second Tuesday of every month. Over the 8 meetings, the committee identified a strategy for soliciting applicants to award the Homer A. Thornton Award, coordinated efforts with the Meadville Independent Business Alliance to ever offer a residential holiday decoration contest in the city, provided financial aid through the Eels Trust to the Shade Tree Commission for tree plantings, and provided funding to downtown businesses who created outdoor eating spaces. In January, the committee appointed Victoria Soff as the chair for the next term. She and the individuals listed below are recommended for council for appointment to a 1-year term to serve the city through the Beautification Committee. That recommended slate is Victoria Soff, Anna Mack, Josh Sheritz, Autumn Vogel, Larry McKnight, Casey Dixon, Greg, Andy.
Kadzierski.
Thank you. Sarah Chapp, Travis Smith, Julia Kemp, Kristen Smith, Dan Walk, and Shannon Rock. And just a note for council, their term would commence March 1st of 2021 and end February 28th of 2022.
Council, I'll note to remind you, when council adopted the appointment policy, right, we visited this, that the ordinance that created the beautification committee sets up a different nomination and slate approval of candidates and volunteers, which is prescribed by code, which is the slate gets presented by the committee to council in February of each year for the term as Katie just described. And that's why it hasn't gone through the standard sort of interview process, if you will. We did advertise through the city's Facebook page and requesting that interested people contact the committee to express their interest, and that's how this slate was developed.
Okay. Motion to approve the report.
I would so move.
Second.
I second.
Discussion, questions? I want to thank everybody for volunteering to be on that committee. They did some good things last year. I'm sure they got some things planned for us for 2021. So with that, roll call.
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel?
Aye.
Stearns?
Aye. Under new business, we have a discussion and draft ordinance amending the article of the Fire Prevention Code. Andy? I guess Andy, I'm gonna give that to you.
Yeah, we're literally just discussing. I thought I only had the fee schedule. Give me 1 second to bring up the ordinance itself. Council, there was a presentation last meeting by Chief Wiley. Debbie Coral helped prepare that. A representative from PA Fire Recovery Services, who is a third-party billing contractor, was present to answer some questions. Council expressed interest in moving forward with a draft ordinance for discussion. So we're not proposing any adoption measure tonight. We're not doing a first and second reading. We've just reviewing the contents of a proposed draft for further council discussion and reaction. I fear that I did not communicate very well with my staff. It was probably my intent to have Chief Wiley here also, but we've been working on this collaboratively. What we would in effect be doing is amending, as it shows here, that we would be amending Part 15 of the Meadville Municipal Code, which is currently entitled the Fire Prevention Code. We'd be repealing that article and retitling it the Fire Prevention Code and replacing it with the Fire and Rescue Services fees would be the new title. So you'll see Section 1 is just that action. And Elizabeth is of course on the phone. She helped to prepare this. We did use the model ordinance provided by the contractor. It hadn't been for Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, but that's sort of the platform from which we built. So Section 1 is just rescinding the article and renaming it as referenced, with inserting these new sections as follows. The findings and intent is pretty simple and straightforward, just sort of laying out the purpose of why we're interested in collecting the fee, and that the intent is such that council intends to seek recovery of all reasonable costs to responding to emergency incidents as allowed by applicable law. Then we get into what are the recovery of costs section, lays out what are the basic responsive service fees, right? That we hereby intend to recover reasonable costs for the use of emergency rescue tools, apparatus, equipment, materials, hazardous material abatement tools and equipment, hazardous abatement materials, fire suppression tools and equipment, and personnel hours involving hazardous materials, environmental, fire safety, and or rescue incident, including vehicular accidents and fires. So sort of a comprehensive menu of incidents that we would potentially bill for and the types of materials and manpower. The fee schedule itself, there was a proposed fee schedule that we reviewed last meeting, and this attached here in front of you actually reflects that. So engine, aerial, ladder, rescue, tanker, etc. The equipment or service fees. And then as we scroll further down, the false alarm fee is actually currently in our existing ordinance. We have a false alarm fee, and we just bring those fees over into the new amended ordinance. So essentially, the ordinance would allow the fee schedule that we just reviewed to be adopted by resolution. So if council were to change the fee schedule, you could change the fee schedule by resolution without having to amend the ordinance. That's essentially the mechanics there. And false alarm fees I've addressed very quickly. Here is this section D is an important one where we see the reasonable cost outlined above may be recovered by any identified insurance carrier and recovered by the city, by an attorney, or through a third-party billing service. So the ordinance itself says we could use any one of those methods to collect the fee, whether we did it in-house or through an attorney or third-party billing service. We're proposing, right, to contract with a third-party billing service, but the ordinance allows any of those actions. And then would also allow us to collect any reasonable fees based on those third parties. So what that doesn't say is that it doesn't say that we're in these instances that we're not billing an individual in this case. That the ordinance specifically says they may be recovered from any identified insurance carrier. And I invite Elizabeth or Gary Johnson to chime in at any point because they were both involved in drafting here. Part E there says that in any event that an insurance carrier or person, which we'll talk about later, if you fail to pay the bill or invoice, that we can use a third-party collection agency if deemed appropriate, and could file for civil action in a relevant court of law. As we go on, requirements to pay for reasonable costs. I'm going to draw your attention to section B. So we talked earlier about those costs being billed only to insurance companies. Under section B, however, we reserve the right to bill individuals in the following instances. And those are individuals who intentionally cause a response by the Meadville Fire Department, may be personally liable for the reimbursement of reasonable costs incurred by the city as outlined in this section. These intentional acts include but are not limited to arson, motor vehicle accidents resulting from driver under the influence, causing a false fire alarm, or an environmental incident relating to illegal drugs or hazardous materials. So in those cases where there's more, it's not necessarily an accident per se, we would reserve the right to bill the individual. In the case of arson, motor vehicle accidents resulting from DUI, the false alarm fees would be billed to an individual, not an insurance company, and an environmental incident. So an environmental incident related to illicit or illegal drugs, right? So the instance there that we contemplated was a methamphetamine lab that requires the fire department to stand by or to provide a standby service for hours at a time, for instance. That those fees could be billed to an individual, not to an insurance company. Section C says the city is not obligated to pursue collection efforts against any insurance company or person in the event that the city reasonably determines that the collection efforts will not be successful or the cost of collections will exceed the amount due. And then lastly, we include a section that says, look, nothing in this article shall authorize any city department or staff member or department personnel to refuse or delay any rescue service due to the lack of insurance coverage or ability to pay for said rescue services. It's a pretty simple and straightforward ordinance. I don't know if council has any questions based on this draft that they reviewed. Councilman Roa had brought an idea forward with respect to how the revenue would, how we might apply the revenue or use the revenue. But I guess, is there any questions right now in the draft that you see before you?
Andy, I wondered, can you say more about the difference that this draft ordinance would present to the kind of current fine structure for folks that report a false alarm or are charged with? And are all of the activities that are listed in the ordinance currently, do they fall under that that provision that we have now around false alarms?
So our current existing ordinance includes a false alarm fee, right? That if you, often these are pulled alarms, or more often the case though, it could be a faulty detection system, right? There's a vendor there's a maintenance work going on at the DEP building, and they trip the alarm system and generate an emergency response. Is more often the case. So a pulled alarm or a faulty alarm system is usually what results here. And so we've had these fees in here, as you see down here at the bottom. The first through third events are no charge, but as it becomes increasingly a problem, we charge a fee for that emergency response. So we currently have that in our ordinance. This amended ordinance carries that forward. It says, look, we're not charging those fees to an insurance company, we're charging those fees to the individual property owner.
Right, I guess my question is, does it expand like the circumstances under which we'll do that? And does it become more stringent on people, right? Like, do we envision still having this kind of like no charge for the first time, or are we kind of charging from as proposed now, are we kind of charging from the first incident?
This does not change. We're already doing this as described. I guess, yeah. So I guess where my question is coming from is right, like we were,
you know, when we had the presentation last time, right, we were like assured that individuals wouldn't be charged, right? And so I guess I'm trying to like fully understand the extent to which individuals would be charged and how that's different than what's already happening now, right? Like on the books, like what we're actually doing. Yeah.
Right. So we do not charge for any fire. There is a flat fire fee and a motor vehicle accident fee. The fire fee was $550, Gary?
Yes.
The current. So we do have that charge now, right? But it's a flat fee. So that's the current fee. And we have a motor vehicle accident fee for just motor vehicle accident response or with extrication. As we reported to you last time, though, we've not billed, and in the past historically not been good at successfully collecting on motor vehicle accidents. So in this case, we would expand the billing by doing a menu as opposed to the flat 550 fee. We've got that menu. We would bill only the insurance companies in the events of motor vehicle accidents and fires. But this paragraph B, where we would bill individuals or propose to bill individuals instead of insurance companies, would be where individuals who intentionally cause a response. And in this case, those include but not limited to arson, motor vehicle accidents involving DUI, causing a false alarm, or this environmental incident related to illegal drugs or hazardous materials. Those are the only instances that we would propose. Often, yes.
Sure. I guess so this is comparable to what we have already in place.
We don't bill anyone for an arson we could bill under our current ordinance for a DUI accident. The false alarm fees that we already have, which I just showed you, are existing. We just carry those over. We already have those provisions, and we don't bill for an environmental incident related to illegal drugs. So these are new incidents that we would bill, but in this case, we would bill individuals. we're proposing.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear, the difference. Thank you.
Andy, I have a question or maybe a comment.
Yep.
It seems that the false alarm fees are extremely low. I could see maybe the first fee or the first false alarm being no charge, but anything after that, I think should be escalating charges, and I'd be thinking more like $300 and progressing from there. And I'm assuming that this is due to some negligence or criminal intent on the part of the person who's making the false alarm. Am I wrong on that assumption?
Yeah, and I could revisit this certainly for our next meeting, because it would really pertain to the fee schedule. So when we get to third and final reading of the ordinance is when I would propose that we adopt the fee schedule by resolution. And so by then I could have Chief Wiley give us some data, right? What are those incidents? How many times? What are the, I would tend to agree with you, right, that those charges could seem low. And so I'd be glad to go revisit that with him and come back to council with some data in that regard.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Andy? Okay, let's move on. Andy, do you have anything else you want to add?
Mayor?
Yeah,
Mayor?
go ahead.
Yeah, I circulated an email, or actually Andy circulated it for me. I would ask the council consider adding a section to this proposed ordinance specifying that the proceeds of any fees be deposited in a restricted and dedicated capital reserve fund, and that fund be solely used for the acquisition of fire department rolling stock. And that would be defined as vehicles used to extinguish and contain fires and for rescue purposes, or for paying for borrowings related to the purchase of those. Again, if we're going to start billing for services, I think that the people would like to see something concrete, and these fees, if we realize those fees, could go a long way toward making the payments on a piece of fire equipment like a pumper.
Could I just add in, we're already billing for these fees, we're just not collecting them.
I mean, are you talking about billing in general, Sean? Are you reacting to Jim's comment about are you reacting to Jim's comment about establishing a reserve?
Yeah, he said if we're going to start billing these, and don't we bill them now?
I understand.
We should be billing them now. I mean, they already exist.
Well, the flat fee, right? A flat fee for motor vehicles and fire fees. We do bill the fire fee, and we have reasonable success there. We've not been actively billing motor vehicle accidents because apparently historically we've not been very successful.
Okay.
But we would be billing based on this menu item and billing in many instances much more than the $500 fee.
Other than that, I'm in agreement with Jim. That's fine. What he wants to do.
What I like about that, right, is twofold. Is that in terms of using this revenue for the general fund and for quote balancing a budget, we don't know what this revenue will be on a year-to-year basis. It'll be based on actual responses. It'll be on the type of incidents. So it could be 5,000 one year, 12,000 next year, back down, and so the ability to budget regular recurring revenue would be suspect. And to Councilman Rowe's point when he shared this information with council is that essentially by establishing an equipment reserve, we have the ability then to a dedicated source of funds. We've talked many times about our need for a new aerial, new engine. We've got major equipment purchases coming forward. This revenue could be used either for new equipment itself or to pay debt service on new equipment or to leverage grant funds as matching funds for new equipment. So I think it's would be very smart of council to include this language and to establish this reserve fund.
Andy, I agree. I think I'm for putting that in, yes.
Yes, so am I.
I think that, okay. You're on mute, I believe.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's a good idea certainly for the long haul. I think that's how we need to be thinking. I did just want to note, right, that the third party billing came up in budget in our talks about the budget, right? And so, I think it's good that we create a reserve with this funds, but right, then we just need to be doing the kind of thinking that we had proposed, right, at the end of last year, where we said we need to start thinking early about how we balance the budget. We'll just need to figure out something else. So just want to encourage all of us to do our best thinking, I guess. I don't know. I think it's a good idea to create the reserve fund. Just want to
Thanks, Jim.
position put this in.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you all.
So we will add, Elizabeth, it has to be codified to establish a reserve fund. The research it has to be done by ordinance. And so we would use Jim's language or some version of that. So in the draft that'll come before you for first and second reading, we will include then a new section that includes some version of the Jim's suggested language for this purpose.
Sounds good.
Elizabeth, anything to add on your end?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think you covered everything really thoroughly, Andy, and I'd be happy to add in the language to the ordinance that establishes the special fund. We'll have that ready for next time.
Great. Okay, we'll have that teed up for first and second reading then at the next meeting.
All right, any other questions for Andy on that? We'll move on to new business resolution approving and adopting First Amendment to Article of Incorporation for the Meadville Market House. Katie?
A resolution of the Council of the City of Meadville approving and adopting a First Amendment to Articles of Incorporation of Meadville Market Authority to extend Meadville Market Authority's existence for a term of 50 years. Resolved by the Council of the City of Meadville that whereas the Council of the City of Meadville enacted Ordinance Number 2762 on January 26, 1971, organizing a municipal authority and setting forth the proposed Articles of Incorporation of the authority to be known as the Meadville Market Authority. And whereas the Secretary of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania issued a certificate of incorporation evidencing the incorporation of the Meadville Market Authority on March 22, 1971. And whereas said certificate of incorporation provided for the existence of the Meadville Market Authority for a term of 50 years. And whereas said term of 50 years expires on March 22, 2021. And whereas Meadville Market Authority desires to amend the Articles of Incorporation in order to increase its term of existence by 50 years, and adopted Resolution Number 1 of 2021 on February 17, 2021, to enact such amendment and request the City of Meadville approve by resolution such amendment of the Articles of Incorporation. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved by the Council of the City of Meadville that the proposed First Amendment to Articles of Incorporation, as set forth and approved by the Board of Directors of Meadville Market Authority and the resolution of the Market Authority dated February 17, 2021, is hereby approved and adopted by the Council of the City of Meadville. And the executed First Amendment to Articles of Incorporation shall be advertised and delivered by Meadville Market Authority or its representative to the Secretary of the Commonwealth of the Pennsylvania.
Motion to approve and adopt.
I motion we approve.
Second.
I will second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Your Honor, I'll just, the resolution is pretty straightforward because of the impending expiration of the Articles of Incorporation of the authority. They met this morning to take the action as referenced there by resolution. They've adopted this amendment. And so the second action here is your action. Elizabeth had reported at the last meeting when we first brought this up, right, that the Pennsylvania statute allows us to happen by resolution or ordinance. And I think we all agreed that ordinance is the preferred method by which it would be done, just because it's codified, better searched. When we're all dead and gone, the next city clerk will, be able to find, these documents. However, we've determined that we're not able to do it by ordinance, to do it first and second reading, third and final, and the effective date takes us beyond the expiration of the Articles of Incorporation. So we've proposed actually to do it by resolution, what you see here tonight, which meets the threshold of the Secretary of the Commonwealth. And we also propose, however, to come back and also do it via ordinance, which we can do at a future meeting. But for the sake of expediency, we're doing it by resolution. And so I think that's what we're proposing here.
I'm in agreement with that.
Elizabeth, what would you add at this point?
In the sea of that process of going by resolution first and then ordinance as a follow-up, and there's nothing the matter with that. We've got the draft ordinance ready for you guys, so this isn't something that would drag on. Are there any questions or concerns I can address?
No, not for me.
No.
Councilman Rowe, you had asked about the cost, right? At the last meeting, there's a $70 filing fee. The more expensive cost, though, would be the advertising requirement as a legal notice, which could probably run $300 to $500, frankly. We propose, because it is a city authority and it's the city essentially extending the charter of the authority, we do propose that those be city costs and they would come out of the city clerk's budget.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Roll call.
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Bogle?
Aye.
Stearns?
Aye. Before council member statements, Mike, do you have any questions for council or Andy?
Mayor, I think you guys addressed this in your closing comments, but my main question was just going to be about reactions to Andy's resignation and the, looking ahead to the future and filling that position.
Well, first of all, I'll answer my end of it. We certainly want what's best for Andy and for his future. He's not leaving the city. He's not going to be far away that we can't pick up the phone and talk to him. I think council as a whole will have to sit down and look at the process of work, appointing a temporary city manager, and of course discussing how we go through the process of replacement. He's done a great job for us. I hate to say it in the third party, he's still with us. He's done a great job. A lot of shoes to fill, or large shoes to fill. And personally, I just want to wish him the very best, and we'll just move on and work it out. Anybody else want to respond?
Yeah, I will. I've enjoyed working with Andy. I've learned from him. I remember Andy when I was involved with RDA many years ago when he was first starting, and I've watched him grow and seen how he's always had a heart for making this a better area. One of the good things is that in his new position, I think he's still going to be able to help and show his continued concern and willingness to see Meadville grow, and also us grow commitment and help with Allegheny College, us becoming one community instead of separated. I think that's a good thing, being that he is a family man here. It's just more than just a job to him. Definitely I'll miss him. But like we said, he's only a phone call away. So, and yeah, I'm glad that he's chasing his dream. That's a good thing.
Thank you, Larry.
And on the other side, I do have someone in mind that I would like to see in that position. That's all.
Jim, Sean, Autumn, anyone else want to make any comments?
Are we doing council member statements?
No, we still got council member statements yet. So.
Okay. Well, yeah,
These are direct questions to Mike.
I'd like to say maybe a couple things. Andy, I've known you longer than everybody since you were an Allegheny student. And I used to give you advice on how to live your life. Hopefully you took all of it. I've enjoyed working with you for the past 3 years. I'm sorry we won't be working together for more years, but I'm glad that you have an opportunity to experience professional growth in an area that you love, and I wish you much success. I still don't want to accept your resignation. I don't think there's a law that says I have to, but anyway, we will miss you very much here.
Thank you, Jim, and I expect that I'll be before council in partnership and in some capacity or another, and working with city staff. So I look forward to that continued relationship.
Since this is Sean, I just congratulate Andy on this job with the college, on his employment with the college, and I'm sure he'll be an asset to the college as he has been for the city, and he'll continue to be an asset for everybody. I'm really glad that you're staying here, Andy, and not going somewhere else. So we'll still have you here in Meadville, just in a different capacity.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, congratulations to you, Andy. I certainly wish you the best. On the other side of Jim's coin, I don't know that I've ever told you how to live your life, but I appreciate you telling me how to live mine, and I appreciate you meeting with me as an Allegheny student, interested in staying in town, and bringing my Meadville here, and for many ways being responsible for me being here. So you all have Andy to thank indirectly for me being here. I am really hopeful that yeah, in your new role, right? Like you can, I mean, you know the issues and the needs of this community better than anybody. And I'm glad that we'll have someone in that position who's able to center those and hopefully kind of, direct Allegheny's partnership with Meadville in a way that kind of centers the needs of our community. I think we can be pretty strong because of this partnership. So thanks for everything. Congratulations.
Thank you, Autumn. Thank you.
Mike, do you have any other questions for council?
I think I have any more right now, Mayor. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thanks. With that, council member statements. Autumn, I'll start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor. I'll just a very, very brief update. The climate action plan program has begun, has commenced. We have launched the task force. Guy McCumber from the Planning Commission is now chairing that effort, and so we'll continue these kind of weekly trainings that we go through the Department of Environmental Protection. Really, again, I'll just underscore how fortunate we are to have Guy as part of that process. He's already connecting us to potential resources, and really excited for the kind of community engagement piece that we're looking at coming up. If folks are interested in being part of this task force or being part of any of the opportunities for public input and community engagement, they can shoot me an email. Thanks.
Larry?
Yeah, I'd just like to just first of all say thank you again to Andy, and also about the Climate Task Force. Yeah, if anybody, it's a great idea. It's a great project. I'm looking forward to being a part of it. And I really would recommend people from the city voice your opinions and ideas and thoughts. And with the weather getting ready or supposedly going to take a change, everyone be safe, continue to wear your mask, and just be safe out there.
Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, again, Andy has done a great job. We're going to miss him. We appreciate all he's done. The city has accomplished quite a bit and continues to do so with a staff that is a fraction of the size it was 25 years ago. And we're tackling a number of major initiatives now, and we're making progress on at least 2 or 3 of them. So thanks to the administration, thanks to staff, thanks to our employees for the phenomenal job they're doing, and just ask that they keep up the good work. We appreciate their efforts. Thank you.
Thanks. Sean?
I'd just like to say, just stay inside. Of course, everybody is. This is really bad weather. It's been so cold. I just can't believe it. And I can't believe, like Texas, it's 50 degrees below normal down there. It's just unbelievable. But make sure you don't leave your animals out too long. I mean, people put their pets out, and just a few minutes is all anybody can stand in right now. And just remember that they can't take it either. Just that's it.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Andy, thank you for everything you're doing for us. Again, you're not going anywhere too far that we won't be able to work together as a city through the college. So I just glad you're happy and wish you all the very best. With that, do we have anything for executive session?
Your Honor, I do have one a real estate item. Nope, I'm sorry, a litigation item that I would like to address with you.
I like real estate first.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's a litigation matter.
Okay.
Should only take a few minutes.
All right, thanks. So if I have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn to executive session.
Second?
I'll second.
Thanks. Roll call.
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Right.
Vogel?
Aye.
No, we're just finishing up our meeting. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to stop the live stream.